Welcome to this additional video accompanying the last one about the changes to DemoCap with a little more information about another little change which is not easy to see but might be useful for certain people. So what has been changed in the last video talked about various things, including adding collision shapes, model collision and simple collisions for objects missing it. So when you have a character, then you usually have your own kind of rig defined. So I've enabled here debug view, so you see a little bit the kind of measures and collision measures and collision shapes used. So in the Drag Engine, it's usually best to use analytic shapes. So that's the default. Oh, let's take the here. So you get then something like this, capsules, boxes, stuff like this, which you then also can connect with constraints and stuff like this. So the typical shapes like sphere, capsules, boxes are supported in addition to tapered ones. So you can also taper the capsules like here on the tail section, or even taper boxes. So when you use DemoCap, or also if you use make a game project with a Drag Engine game engine, you usually create this yourself, either in Blender and exporting the rig, or using the IGDE to edit the rig inside the editor directly. So if you don't do this, like for example, you have a fresh model you want to start doing motion capture with, or you have started like a project and you have a model, but you don't have a rig yet, or just for the editor situations, it can happen that you have then the model and no rig or an empty rig, which you have set to use model collision. And model collision, when used for a static model, which does not have any kind of animation, like this facade in the back, then you can, without a problem, use direct triangle collision detection, which is not as fast as it could be, but enough. But as soon as it's a dynamic model, using triangle-based collision detection is a problem, and especially the bullet physics library used underneath is not happy about this situation. So it has been disabled until now, and I've now made a little modification to simplify the process. So the physics module will now, if you give it a model collision model, which does not have a rig or a rig which is empty, it will internally auto-generate collision shapes for your model so that you have a kind of analytic shape like this one here that can be used for collision detection, which is a lot faster than trying to use triangle mesh collision, which Bullet provides. So let's go over to this one, which I used last time to show how to create assigning default textures. And this one I've set to not have any collision shapes in the rig. So what usually happens if you export from Blender into DemoCap to do motion capture, then you get a rig, but no shapes. So let's do the auto rigging. So I just activate it and that's it. So I will also create an object so it's easier to see and compare. So a little bit back. Good. So on the right side, that's the rig which I've created myself. And on the left side, that's the automatically generated rig by the physics module. So as you can see, it has the possibility to use the same analytic shapes I can do, and it will try to use the best fitting, in its own opinion, the best fitting shape for individual bone segments. So this can be capsules, tapered capsules, it can choose spheres, it can choose boxes, tapered boxes. So it will just try the different shapes, pick the one which works best, most probably which has the least volume. And then we'll use it to cover all the bones it can find in the mesh with a as tightly fitting box. It looks at which vertices influence a bone to a certain degree. It's a little bit of a clever threshold used there. And then you get this. Of course, if you do your own shapes, that's the best because you can then optimize it, use as few shapes as really necessary, make only bones have shapes which you want to collide with. It's all the stuff which the automatic collision detection, collision shape generator will not do, but it will make sure that you have a mesh that is possible to interact with, and it's actually fast because it's analytic shapes and not what is often done in other kind of such automatic collision shape generators. It's not a convex hull decomposition. While convex hull decomposition works, convex hulls are not nearly as fast as analytic shapes. And in most situations, you don't really see the difference. So I'm sticking here to pure analytic shapes, and then you get this. So this can be used, for example, in editors. If you just load a mesh in an editor or in DemoCap, you will just get kind of model collision quickly. So something that works. It's not perfect, it's not optimized, but it's quite well for just being generated mesh collision shapes. Or you can actually even use it if you're doing game development and you have some kind of non-hero assets that are not really that important. The player doesn't really get that much to it, can interact with it, but it's not that important if the collision shapes are really well done. So you can just say a drop in the model collision, and the physics engine, the physics module will decide how to quickly and best generate a rig for this one. So it's a little bit of a shortcut which you can use. Always granted that you remember it's a shortcut and it cannot compete in the end with a full rig. But as a little final example, that's one mesh of mine. Let's take a more, well, let's say industry grade example. That's one of such meshes I have for testing, which did not have any kind of collision shapes. So let's load it and see what the auto rigger does. And that's actually not that bad, I think, for an auto rigger. So yeah, in a split second, you already have, yeah, a little bit too many spheres, but that's okay. Could be maybe a little bit improved. That depends on how this mesh has been rigged, weighted, bone weights. It could be that bone weights are not so optimal. But in general, it recognizes all kinds of stuff, gives you kind of collision shape, which in general doesn't look that bad. And especially interesting that wing sections like this, which are always a pain for rigging, it actually creates not that bad kind of collision shapes, given that this one here looks like it only has two bones in the wings. So it creates rather large shapes, but even for that, I would say I've not seen many hand-created collision shapes which look better in this situation than which this auto rigger generated. So this is, as mentioned, it only generates the collision shapes which you see now overlaid. It does not do automatic weighting or something like this. So it depends on good weight painting on your model, but it can just say, okay, here's the rig, here are the bone structure, and bam, you get collision shapes, which most of the time are good enough to do the trick for what you needed. So that has been a little bit sneak peek at what underneath happens if you use a model collision, that you get something that actually works without killing your performance straight away. So in this, have a nice day and see you until next time.